everybody, and welcome to Alan History Nerd. This is another one of my specials where I'm looking at A-level history technique for AQA. Now, we're looking at the extract questions on Unit 1. Now, I teach two different Unit 1s at my college. I teach both 1C, the Tudors, and 1H on Tsarist and Communist Russia. You'll find information on both those, information and content on both those courses on my channel. But this makes it very difficult for me to do a technique video that applies to all my students. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one using a hypothetical future and a made-up source. This also solves copyright problems. So we are going to be looking at an extract by the very special YouTube historian Professor Thomas Catt. Now, as you can see, there is going to be a little bit of unusualness about this, but the fundamentals on how you do the extract questions will be fundamentally helpful, I hope. So extract questions in Unit 1. They are the first question on every Unit 1 every one paper. They're worth 30 marks, and they will. You'll see the three extracts written by three different historians, and the question after it will go, using your understanding of the historical context, assess how convincing the arguments in these three extracts are in relation to, and then whatever they're about. And they'll normally relate to one of the key questions in that Unit 1. So the absolute fundamental of what you're doing is addressing how convincing they are, and that word convincing should turn up lots and lots of times in your answer. There will be three extracts in, all written by historians, so you don't do any of that provenance stuff that you do with question 1 on Unit 2. That's completely irrelevant. You are just concentrating on the arguments and therefore trying to assess whether they are correct, whether they are convincing, whether you can support them with evidence or not. Now, if the extracts are correctly selected, then they should contain lots of argument, but it should be very thin on factual detail. This doesn't mean the historian didn't write that factual detail. It will have been cut out to give you plenty to add in yourself. You deal with each extract individually, hence in this video I'm only going to look at one, because essentially you just repeat the same process 3 times. And in this video, as I've already mentioned, we're going to look at a made-up example. This is written by Professor Thomas Catt, a renowned YouTube historian, and it's written in a hypothetical future. Now, so this works for anybody doing any unit. I'm going to set the context, historical context, which is all going to be made up. We're then going to look at this extract, which is allegedly written by a Catt historian, which again is completely made up. And then we will go through how I would answer it. Now, all that again might seem a little bit mad, but the aim of it is to just show you the technique rather than you worrying about the historical context. And often, so I do this and I do it on a bit, and the student hasn't covered it, or they're doing a different extract, and they'll look at it and go, I can't do that one because I don't know this, or I can't do that because I don't know that. So we're going to give you all the different bits in the first part of the video and take you through the process. So, some fake historical context for you. So this is very important. So it is theoretically 2050, COVID restrictions have finally been lifted and the vaccination program has been a success. Now there has been an added bonus to this. It's been made cats even more super intelligent and long living. And therefore my cat Thomas has gone on to become a professor of history, something which he currently feels held back from doing. Now, Alan History Nerd, this channel, failed to cater to this new and important demographic, and they made up less than 10% of subscribers and less than 5% of viewers going forward. Study of the internet during the COVID years has become a key historical topic in which Professor Thomas is a leading expert, specialising on education through YouTube and the puniness of humans, which is a key aspect of how he sees the world. With a switch to lots of online and blended learning, Alan History Nerd was one of the many channels to grow during this period. The simplicity of his videos and direct addressing of exam content made it appealing, but it did have its critics, believe it or not, who argued the production values were too low, especially the audio quality. The videos were seen by some as being too long and Alan as being rather annoying. I'm sure none of those are things that you would agree with. So, further fake historical context, and I've tried to make this as dramatic as possible. This is not based on real life events, by the way, but some bits of it are true. It's one of those bits. It's a bit like The Crown. So, there were also splits in the team. That's not true. There's been no splits in the team. In 2025, Fran's New Testament Explained, which is a real channel, really took off and took an unexpected turn as it became the basis of a whole new religion. Fran increasingly concentrated on this and her followers as Franism swept the world and split from the Alan History Nerd team. We would be very sad to lose her, so let's hope that doesn't happen. Tom, that's Tom who works on the channel doing mainly modern history videos and some Tudor ones, and not the cat, was plagued by lack of sleep and struggled to cope with the tendency of all 17 of his children. He doesn't really have 17 children. To dislike every video that he made. His prominent role in the movement denouncing Franism as heresy also distracted from his efforts. His videos, however, remained of a high standard, despite this very challenging fake future he goes through. Alan, meanwhile, determined to cover the entirety of human history with relevant videos, failed to keep up with technological and production advances. This gave his videos a nostalgic but dated appearance. His political videos continue to gain more viewers than history ones. The channel hit 10,000 subscribers in 2025 and peaked at 74,000 in 2030. Obviously, these are made-up numbers in a made-up future. But entering a steep decline, losing over 5,000 subscribers a year for the next 10 years. So that's from 2030 onwards. In 2050, it has 2,000 subscribers and Alan is unable to live on the income it generates. His house is full of unsold merchandise. There have been suggestions by some of my students that I should produce merchandise, which I am wholeheartedly not going to do. So we have here our fake history, and we'll notice in here that there's bits of kind of factual detail and stuff, some bits that we will go back to when we're helping explain the extract. So this is the extract himself, written by Thomas Catt, the renowned professor of history. In his book, The COVID Struggles of Puny Humans. So we've got a historian and a title of a book. Now, we don't really have to pay that a huge amount of attention. Now, you might get it where you get a historian you recognise. You might get it where the title gives away something about what their argument is likely to be. But normally speaking, it's historian book about the stuff that I'm studying. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. Again, it can help if you recognise the historian, but it's not a big deal. So what does the extract say? Alan History Nerd was aptly named and for a period of time a success. Typical of those YouTube channels that sought to help students learn outside the traditional classroom environment, its success however quickly declined after 2030. This was in part due to the channel's failure to keep up with the times and in part due to a schism, a split divide, between my namesake Tom and Fran. Their fighting tore at the fabric of the channel. Tom's videos proved the least popular, picking up the most dislikes, which was clearly due to quality. The fundamentals of the channel remain solid and it must be considered a great success, especially as it was made by puny humans that cannot be expected to compete with cats. It does, however, have much that a cat audience enjoys, as it shows the failings of humans in running their own affairs, obviously because of all its politics and history content in there. So that's the extract. Now the extracts are going to be between 120 and 150 words, and this is 130 odd, so this is about the right length. It has got lots of opinion in it and not a huge amount of factual detail. So we're going to be able to compare that to what we've got from our context earlier on and build an answer out of this. So the question for this extract would have been, using your understanding of historical context, assess how convincing the arguments in these three extracts are in relation to the YouTube channel Alan History Nerd in the years 2019 to 2050. So as in with all Unit 1 questions, the question must cover at least 20 years. So this one we're covering 31, so we've met the rubric on that one. Now, what you're going to do when answering one of these questions, and this is my suggestion, so there are obviously other ways of doing it, but this is how I would suggest is a good way of doing it. You're going to write a paragraph explaining the central argument of the extract and its sub-arguments, and then I would also at the end of that state your overall view on how convincing the extract is, and giving a hint of the bits you're going to go on and talk about in the rest of your answer. You're going to write a section looking at aspects of the argument that are convincing. You're going to write a section looking at aspects of the argument that are not convincing, and you're going to write a conclusion. Now, there should be multiple bits in those bits. Now, I've done it as a lot of my students write, which is in great big long paragraphs. Again, you might want to break the convincing bit and the unconvincing bit into several smaller paragraphs, and we'll look at that as we go through. So bearing in mind the extract that we've got and the contextual history that I've been through, and then this structure, I'm going to go through and write an answer. So first of all, my paragraph explaining the central argument of the extract and its sub-arguments. Right, TCAT argues that Alan History Nerd was a highly successful YouTube channel appealing to both humans and cats in the years 2019 to 2050. He goes on to argue that its popularity declined after 2030. TCAT puts this decline in popularity down to the channel failing to move with the times, infighting between Tom, the human, and Fran, and the quality of Tom's videos. Although TCAT is correct that Alan History Nerd had some success, to call it a great success goes too far, limiting how convincing the extract is. His explanations of decline are fairly convincing, but not completely. So I've summarised the actual overall argument and some of the sub-arguments, and then I've given a bit of a hint of where my argument's going to go. So essentially where I've come out on this is that this isn't a really convincing argument. It doesn't really match with the made-up history that I made earlier. It's one of these ones, and this is often the case with these extracts, on first glance you look at it and go, oh yeah, you know, the decline 2030, yeah, no, that all looks right. And if you can be something, this is massively convincing because it kind of fits with what I know. But there's a bit in there, or bits in there, where it just goes too far, and that's often one of the things that you've got to look for in the arguments. That it's not the basic of what they're saying. It's when they start putting things like great success, overwhelming failure, most significant, things like that, and you look at it and go, well, actually, is that the case? Now, that's the kind of bits you have to slightly unpick. So my convincing section. So Alan History Nerd must be considered a success to a point up until 2030, where it peaked at 74,000 subscribers. So I've brought in there factual detail. TCAT's argument convincingly states that this was the case and gives correct reasons for this, as it did indeed help students learn outside the traditional classroom. And again, you might have a bit more information in there, but you could essentially say, so that's what the channel was aiming to do, and that was the situation at the time, and so that worked to that degree. There are some convincing points made about the channel's decline, as there was indeed conflict between Tom and Fran. This was due to the growth of Franism after 2025, causing her to leave the channel and Tom to lead a campaign decrying her as a heretic. This certainly tore at the fabric of the channel. So again, I'm using parts of what's been argued, and I'm bringing in a load of knowledge there, which is stuff that was stated earlier in the video. This channel is still very much as it was in 2019, showing its failure to adapt. So I have got some bits in there that are convincing, though I've not overwhelmingly gone for it, and as you can see that in some of the way that I've phrased it, there are some convincing points. It gives a correct reason. So I'm not going overboard, because actually my counter argument is going to be the stronger one. But still, I've managed to find some convincing bits, and it should be the case that you can find at least something on both sides, convincing and unconvincing, in every extract that you're given in the exam. So my unconvincing section, Tom's not very happy about this and is covering his eyes. There are, however, some very unconvincing elements of the extract. Firstly, it is well known that Tom's videos were not of lower quality. It was simply that all of his 17 children tended to dislike all of his videos. That caused the anomaly compared to the rest of the channel. So again, factual detail being brought in to knock down a point. And again, this is one of the more difficult bits, is having that confidence to attack a statement by a historian using your knowledge. You will note, of course, that I do not say I know from my own knowledge, because that is just a waste of words and is just going to irritate whoever's marking my paper. It's just bad, and so that's just bad method. So again, it is well known that it is the case that evidence shows that, something along those lines. Secondly, it is clear that the channel was not aptly named and for a period of time of success, as it contained more politics and history content, and even at 74,000 subscribers, it was not enough to earn the lowest available YouTube plaque, which you need 100,000 subscribers for. I can but dream. TCAT overplays the success of the channel, especially with cats that made up less than 10% of subscribers and account for less than 5% of views. So again, I'm bringing in that factual detail to fundamentally undermine the argument that's made in the extract. Alan has been left with a house full of unsold merchandise and unable to live on the revenue from the channel. Hardly a great success. The flaws in production quality are also completely ignored. Now, that kind of stuff I might bring in, but I don't want to spend too much time dealing with stuff that's just not in the extract. That kind of argument in terms of absence is not a strong one. So the bits earlier in that paragraph, the bit where I've actually pointed out bits of the argument and said, look, this isn't true because of this, or this isn't convincing because of this, they are far stronger than that final point. So that's probably the weakest bit of that particular paragraph. So the bit in terms of looking at Tom's children and how they dislike his videos, and the bit kind of highlighting, well, what is a success on YouTube in terms of subscribers, and then the facts and figures on the amount of the audience made up of cats. Now that is really good solid stuff that's going to undermine the arguments that are in the extract, and you should be able to do that kind of stuff using your knowledge of the historical events to whatever extract you face, either in a practice or a real exam. I then move on to my conclusion. So TCAT's argument is not fully convincing, as it goes too far in calling the channel a great success and substantially overstates its appeal to cats. TCAT accurately picks out the channel's decline. It picks out when the channel's decline started and some of the reasons for its decline, so Fran-Tom split and a failure to update, and therefore has some convincing content. He is not convincing in his analysis for the number of dislikes received by Tom's video. Overall, this extract is not convincing, though it does outline to an extent how the channel did. So again, I often talk about this in terms of making judgments when looking at different extracts or different sources, or generally writing an essay. If you think about things as a line or a continuum, you want to avoid being completely at one end or the other. So if I'd only argued convincing, I'm not leaving myself any room to pick up the marks of balance, and that's going to limit my mark. Same if I argue completely the other end. If I sit completely in the middle, it looks like I've not made a judgment at all. So what I've done here is I've come out on the unconvincing side, but I am admitting I'm not completely at one end. There are some things that are convincing, that are correct in this extract. So I hope that's been helpful for you and shown you the basics of how to do an extract question. If it has been helpful, then please hit like. If you've got any further questions about anything in particular from this video, or about technique in general, then please leave me some comments. If you haven't done already, then please subscribe to Alan History Nerd, on which you will find loads of videos on A-level history, on Tsarist and communist Russia, on modern Britain, and you can see how good Tom's videos really are on that, on the Tudors, on bits of American history. There's loads and loads of stuff on there, and also loads and loads of A-level politics if you're doing A-level politics as well. So thank you very much for watching. Again, I hope this has been useful.